Hey, it's Hieronymus, and on today's episode of A Bassist's Journey, I'd like to introduce my Alembic Doubleneck. I used one neck of this instrument recently on a track called Stair Drone. It's just such an incredible instrument that I thought it deserved its own episode. Now, Alembic is a company that has its roots in the Grateful Dead community and story and family, however you want to refer to it. It began with Bear Owlsley, who, among other things, did the Dead's sound system in the early days. But they didn't only do the PA, but also worked on the amplifiers and the instruments. And so they're known for modifying especially Guild Starfire basses, which were hollow, and so I think it gave them more room for the electronics. And later on, we're building their own instruments. Two of the really important people to know about are Ron Wickersham and Susan Wickersham. So that's two, and another one is Rick Turner, who passed away recently. But they're the ones who, carried it on after it kind of grew away from the Dead scene so much and really focused on just making these incredible instruments. Probably the most famous players are Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead, key person there, Jack Cassidy of Jefferson Airplane, John Entwistle, and probably the most famous player is Stanley Clarke. And you can hear alembics on many, many, many of his albums, especially the classics from the 70s, like School Days. Now, my instrument was made in 1975, and I believe it's the first double neck that Alembic made. Not the last. They've made several since then, and the most famous is known as the John Judge double neck, and it's famous because it was in Rotosound ads in Guitar Player magazine in the 70s. I actually spoke to him by email. Apparently when he had his made, or was looking into getting his made, he was talking to Alembic, and they said, well, why don't we send you a picture of one we made before? Here's that picture. It's mine, right? It's like, this is the picture that they sent him to say, this is what we can do. And he sent me the actual picture, which I thought was really cool. Why don't we give you a tour? So here it is in all its glory, or the body at least. I can't get the whole thing in the one shot, but you'll notice that the neck goes all the way through the body. So this is one possible way to build an instrument. Rickenbackers were built like this, and Alembic decided to do this too. Fenders, the body and neck are completely separate, and the neck is bolted to the body. Gibson, they're called set neck, and the neck is kind of glued into the body. But this is called neck through design, and you can see it's multi-laminate. So I believe this is mahogany and maple. Don't quote me on that. I should have looked it up beforehand. This one too, slightly different widths and everything, but they're both this neck through design, and then these body wings and the center part are glued onto those necks. And this is walnut, I believe, and I think it has a mahogany core. This is pretty neat. It's called a pistol grip. And, this upper horn is what allows the strap to kind of help balance out the body. And I can't say it's the first pistol grip, but it's definitely an early one. One of the more famous pistol grip users is Greg Lake of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP. And one of his basses has kind of two of these. One of the neat things about this instrument, too, is the placement of the logo. I believe this one's sterling silver, and normally that would be found on the headstock. But the headstocks, we'll look at those a little bit later. Maybe there wasn't enough space, or they didn't want to put two. I don't know why, but it looks neat down here. I like it. I think this might be one of the only basses like this. These are called bird tailpieces. And so this is where the strings get mounted, and then the kind of classic Alembic design bridge. Each neck has its own set of pickups. There's two pickups, and then this is the hum canceller. It looks kind of like a pickup, but it doesn't actually produce any sound. There's a process by which there's an adjustment made that allows to cut out any hum that you might get. And you'll notice one set of controls. That's one of the interesting things. You can't play both necks at once. You can only play one at a time. And so this is the neck selector. And it's just 2-position. This is the pickup selector, so you can pick just the neck, both pickups, or just the bridge. And there's also a standby position. This is volume and filter frequency and cue switch for the neck pickup. And this is the same thing for the bridge pickup. Now this has active electronics. This jack here is often mistaken for an XLR jack, but it's not. It is what's known as 5-pin, and I'll show you what that plugs into a little bit later. It does have a standard jack too, but this one is wired in stereo. That's another Alembic feature, that you can send each pickup separately to its own signal chain, its own amplifier. You know, there's a lot of different things you can do with that. Or you can run it in mono, but in order to do that, you need to, on this one, you kind of can't do it with a regular cable. You can do it with the blue box that I'll show you in a little bit. This is a 6-string. When I got it, it was tuned baritone. So it was maybe a 5th higher than a regular bass, so kind of in between bass and guitar, but had it restrung back to what I think it was originally supposed to be, which is what I call bass 6 tuning. The bass 6 was a 6-string bass made by Fender. Others did them too. Gibson made them, Dan Electro. But the bottom 4 strings are like a regular bass, and then 2 higher strings. And so the guitar, it's tuned like a guitar, but in the bass range, right? So this is kind of like a normal 4-string bass, even though it's fretless. So E, A, D, G. These are the exact same notes, right? The bottom string on each is the low E that a normal 4-string bass has, and this one just has 2 higher strings. So if we move up a little bit, we can see the necks here, and then here's the headstocks. And so you can see that the 6-string neck is shorter than the 4-string neck. So the 4-string neck is regular 34-inch scale, so that's like a normal Fender bass. And then the 6-string neck is basically 30-inch scale. It might be closer to 31, but that's known as short scale. Actually, Stanley Clark's basses are also short scale, and the guilds that were modded early on and played by Phil Lesh and Jack Cassidy were also short scale. So they're definitely different, you know, and each one takes a little bit of getting used to. These are called the knobby headstocks, not the standard, not the crown, which is kind of the most well-known Alembic design, not the cone, right? It's got the kind of what would you call it? It's knobby, right? It's got some cutouts there and everything. And so they still make knobby headstock instruments, and I've actually got kind of a cool picture of several knobby headstock instruments next to each other. One thing that I keep mentioning is the blue box. Why is it called a blue box? Because it's a blue box. This is the original one from 1975, I think, still going strong. Here is the other end of that 5-pin cable, right, that I mentioned earlier that people think is an XLR, but it's not. It allows each pickup to be sent separately. So here you can see, I'm reading it backwards. I think this says bass and this says treble. So this is the neck pickup and this is the bridge pickup. So you can send separate cables out to separate signal chains. So you could run the neck pickup clean and then put effects on the treble, the bridge pickup, right? There's all kinds of stuff you could do, but actually you might want to put octave on the neck pickup and distortion or phaser or whatever on the bridge pickup, right? You can. I like experimenting with stereo. It's kind of a hassle, and I don't know if I'd want to mess with it live too much. But if you just want to go mono, you can just use this one. I think it says mono there on the bottom, and so this is really a pretty amazing thing. It's called the DS5, and it's the power supply DS5, and that's because this also powers the instrument. On the back, there is a space for 2 9-volts, so you can power this thing with 9-volt batteries, but it's better to use this thing. And I took the batteries out. I don't want them leaking in there. I don't honestly play this instrument that much, and so I know I'll forget, and I hate leaking batteries. I'm not a big fan of batteries in general, so being able to use this power supply, it has a regular old-fashioned, look at this thing. old school power plug, not grounded, right? So this, plugs into your power strip or whatever, and you're powering the bass with that. So that blue box, the new ones are rack mount. They have a rack mount power supply. I kind of like having this classic blue box that's actually in really good shape, considering its age. This thing's only 5 years younger than me, bass and the blue box. So it's really an astounding instrument. While we're here, here's my Alembic shirt. This is that logo, fancy version of the logo that is found at the bottom of this one, right? And it's normally found on headstocks of other instruments. So, this instrument has a lot of what makes Alembic, right? The neck-through construction, the hippie sandwich with the mahogany core and the walnut top and bottom, the electronics that really, you can get so many different sounds. You can go everything from P-bass, kind of basic bread and butter kind of sounds, to much more emphasizing different mid-range and treble frequencies, and get some really different sounds out of it. I think they sound great with effects too. Sometimes it's like, why bury the sound in effects? But if that's the sound you're going for, why not? And the Alembic really does well with that too. Thanks for checking out the intro to this crazy instrument. Hit the like button, subscribe. Hope to see you again soon. Keep making music and keep listening.